Hello, this is my devlog, a series of me trying to learn coding and game development from scratch. I'm Atreyu, and as you can see, I tried my best to update the channel. There's a new channel banner which I drew myself. I made some thumbnails so it's just not an image of my Unity scene when you look at my channel and see my videos, which is definitely not a good look, so I hope it looks better. And since I'm somewhat of an artist, I decided to draw my thumbnail. Granted, it might not look as good as I wanted it to, but hopefully my art skills will improve with creating Unity assets throughout my career. But anyways, onto the video. So as you can see, I'm trying to create an enemy follow script, in which I basically have the enemy follow the player. I tried to cut down the video as much as possible, so you would still see the progress I've made, but in these first few bits, you'll just see me going through the Unity documentation like the Unity manual and scripting API, because you can see I have a lot of troubles doing a lot of different things, because it's my first time coding in general, so I don't really know a lot about it. You can also see that I'm watching a bunch of different tutorials, so I can see how it should go about creating the enemy follow, so that when I attach it to my enemy object, it'll start following the player. I'm looking on this page because it might help me in creating the enemy follow script, and since I'm an absolute noob in creating these types of things, you can see that my scripting skills are subpar. Of course, you wouldn't know that unless you're a coder yourself, which I'm sure someday someone that knows about coding will watch this video, which is like, hi, how are you? Right here you can see me creating my enemy move script and adding comments, and one of the comments is me basically making a mistake, like naming my float variable the same as my script name. Finally, in the next scene you can see me applying that to my enemy and trying to get it to move towards the player. I'm also trying to get an enemy spawner, which is actually the first code I created without having to look at tutorials. The next scene you can see me applying that to my enemy and trying to get it to move towards the player. I'm also trying to create an enemy spawner, which is actually the first code I created without having to look at tutorials. It's really simple. You just need a loop function, which is basically loops the scripts, and a line of code called instantiate, where you just copy and paste items. So it's pretty easy. You'll see here that the many attempts I've made in trying to get this to work. So you'll see I have a lot of errors. And oh, here's the instantiate script I pointed out earlier. And since I'm newer to this, I have a lot more problems. But at one point you can see that the code is actually working. It's just that they're moving too far close to me. And I wanted it so that if the enemy collided with you, it would just bounce back and then move towards you again. So it's not just pushing into you. I don't know how to do that. And at one point you can see that the enemies just fly. And that's because it doesn't have a rigid body, which basically attaches gravity to the object. At one point, the enemies start running away from me. It could be that the enemy center is off, but I wouldn't know how to check that, because like I said, I usually record my videos every time I code, and then cut it down so you don't see much of the distraction and junk like that, because I do get very distracted. I also usually speed up my videos because this is about 3 to 4 hours of figuring things out, so it's about 4 to 5 times speed. Also, you can see I have a lot of errors even though the enemy spawner and enemy follow scripts are working well, so they're just moving towards me really quickly. And one of the enemies doesn't seem to want to disappear even though he also has the enemy destroy script attached to him when you collide with the player, so you can just see him pushing into the player a lot, which is not good because I wanted it to be able to destroy the enemies, but it seems like it leaves one of the enemies or a couple of enemies in the scene. So I'm just trying to figure that out. So I just decided to delete my enemy, hopefully just leave the enemy spawner in there, and I thought that would fix the problem. But when I deleted my enemy, it just got rid of the enemy attached to the enemy spawner object altogether. Sorry, that's a lot of enemies. So I had to reattach it to the enemy spawner so it knows what object to spawn into the scene, and hopefully that works. And it did. But since the enemies are still having some problems, they're running away from me. So anyways, I'm just trying to get help from people who are on the game dev Discord server, and they helped a bit, but now I'm having problems with gravity. And I just discard the cylinder enemy altogether and add a square enemy so I can see if it's actually hitting the ground, because with cylinders you can't really. And I go back and forth between that and learning what raycasting means, because oh boy, that's a whole other ball game for me. So you can see my enemy spawner is no longer working. For unknown reasons, of course. Why wouldn't it? And it may feel like I have gone backwards a bit in this game making process, but I certainly have made progress. I've learned what raycasting is, sorta kinda, and what a linear interpolation is still, also sorta kinda, or LIRP for short. There's also a term called slurp I have yet to learn about, but I've gained some advice from a couple of developers who have years of experience, and thus have told me to basically just scrap the project and use all of the tutorials you have first before you try anything too big. Join game jams too, which is basically a challenge to make a game within a time period centered around a theme. And although the scale of this project isn't much, I do still think it's a bit big for how long I've been developing games, which is not long at all. So I'm going to use my old Unity courses, which do update with each version, which is nice. I'm going to try and go through them as much as possible, starting with the 2D course and then end with the 3D course. So I feel like I'll probably not post to this channel until I feel like I have something to show. If you don't hear from me again, call the police. Just kidding. Unless... I'm just kidding. I tend to get sidetracked and probably will forget about this channel if I take too long. So right now my main focus is developing games. I really want to try and create my Dream Game someday. I really want to try and create my dream game someday. And I'll talk more about it in the next video, which is a speed paint of just a glimpse into what my dream game will be like. It'll be very interesting because it's actually gonna be based off of the idea of yandere girls, but I'll elaborate more in that video on that. If I wanted to, I could post other videos to this channel too, so leave suggestions on what you'd like to see. I may or may not take them depending on what they are. I hope that I can develop this channel into a successful YouTube channel. Of course, you see at the end of the clip, I basically made it so the cube would follow me. But it isn't staying attached to the ground and instead is looking up at the player. I have to fix that. And my destroy enemy script and spawn enemy script have stopped working, so until I know enough, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching, okay? Bye.